So how many people in here have actually started a threat intelligence capability for their organization? Raise your hand. Oh, it's a good number. That's awesome. How many people in here have come in and inherited a a threat intelligence capability and you're trying to level it up? Raise your hand. All right, for those of you that raise your hands, you don't have to raise your hand for this part, but how many of you felt at one point or another, what the heck am I doing? I'll tell you what, I felt like that, and it's actually pretty recent. I got the job at Netflix, and I thought I could do no wrong. I had been building threat intelligence capabilities for about 10 years or so I was like, I got it in the bag. You know, this is what I do, this is my life. But I'd say it took about a week for the color in my face to like just completely drain away. Because Netflix is such a unique environment, not only culturally, but from a technological perspective, and even an operations perspective. I came in and I was like, okay, cool, you know, so I want to interface with the SOC. They said, we don't have a SOC. I was like, okay, all right, you know, no big deal, we don't have a SOC. You know, that's usually who I talk to for a lot of operations stuff. I'll just need access to the SIM. We don't have a SIM. Okay, cool. And at this point, I'm like freaking out, right? And so I was like, hey guys, you know, I'm not feeling well. I'm gonna go ahead and go home for a little bit and I'll be back tomorrow. And they were like, all right, go ahead. And so I went home and I called my wife. I'm like, oh my gosh, things are just so different here. I need to like recenter and figure out what the heck I need to do. Because it felt like all the experience, all the training that I had up until that point, like 70% of it didn't apply to this space. And so I'm thinking like, you know, they brought me out here, they flew me, you know, all the way across the country, they're bringing my family out here. What the heck am I gonna do in order to actually show value for threat intelligence for one of the most, you know, innovative companies in the world? I'm Chris Cochran, I lead threat intelligence at Netflix. I was in the Marine Corps for about 5 years or so. That's kind of where I got my chops. And like Rick said, Ron and I, we run a podcast, Hacker Valley Studios. We talk about threat intelligence quite a bit, but we talk about everything from fashion and cybersecurity all the way through, you know, red teaming with math. So it's really interesting. What happened when I went home? Actually, I went home, I pulled the shades down. I was like, I don't want anyone to see me. I just sat in my room and I thought, like, how do I get back to base? How do I get back to ground zero and build from there? Because obviously coming in with all of this extra baggage from where I was coming from wasn't going to work. I came in and I said, hey, you know, I want to do intrusion analysis, you know, because if you've taken Rob Lee's course, you know, he talks about intrusion analysis as being one of the cornerstones for threat intelligence. And it's, oh yeah, we already do that with our post-incident reviews. And so I'm like, oh man, I just can't win. And so I sat and I thought, and I remembered all the things that I'd done as a consultant. Because I was a consultant for a long time. I'd done my own company. I'd been with Mandiant for a while, and I was at Booz for a little bit. And I thought about all the things that I did to help all of these other organizations. Because even though there's a lot of differences, there's still a lot that's the same. And so I thought, you know, what are the bare bones? And I came up with this framework for how to get back to zero. And what's interesting is I really didn't come up with the acronym until we had a visit from a pretty notable comedian, Jerry Seinfeld. He came on site and he had done like his whole shebang. He did an interview with one of our execs and it was really cool, but then he did a Q&A at the end. And during the Q&A, one of the questions was, what do you do now? Like you've made it to the top, you know, of your career. Like what's on the forefront of your mind now? And on the forefront of his mind was reaching back out and sharing his knowledge with, you know, up and coming comedians, because he wanted to coach. He didn't want to just take, you know, all of his money and run. He wanted to actually reach back out into the community and share something. And so I came up with this acronym called EASY. It's the EASY framework. And I feel like this encapsulates not only my career, what I've done, you know, for other organizations, but also encapsulates what happened when I went home and I shut the shutters and I thought about what I needed to do to get this program running. So the E for the easy button is Elicit Requirements. Now, requirements is something that is super important for a program. Requirements start with the stakeholder. So what I did was, when I came into Netflix, I came in with requirements already in mind. But what I really needed to do is take the time and sit down with each and every one of the stakeholders and talk about what are the intelligence requirements that they need to get their missions done. And so I spent about 60 days going across the country, meeting with different people, having discussions with them about their requirements, their missions, and the things that they needed to get their jobs done. So you sit down and you talk to them. The reason why you want to do this is a few different reasons. You want to build that relationship. If you go into an organization and you know you're going to be supporting a function within security or the business writ large, you might want to build a relationship with them. Because raise your hand if and you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to, but raise your hand if you've been in a scenario where you go into a new company or you're on a new team and you can feel the eyes on you, like, oh, there's the threat intel person, and they go, so tell me about your way of doing threat intelligence. And that tells you that something in their past has made them think that threat intelligence wasn't going to be worth its weight. Because it's happened to me multiple times. I've gone into an organization and they're like, oh, so tell me about the way you do threat intelligence. And I already know that they have seen somebody else that wasn't doing their job. Maybe they were just copying and pasting things from the internet and not really providing any value. And so then you have to talk to them and let them know, this is what I'm here to do. This is where my value lies as a threat intelligence analyst. Sometimes you're going to sit down with a stakeholder and they're not going to know what they need. Maybe they originally, didn't think they needed threat intelligence at all. But if you sit down with them and you ask fact-finding questions and solidifying questions, you might come to an agreement and you might get to an aha, like this is an intelligence requirement for you. And that's something that's great because you came up with it together. So don't be disparaged if you go in and there's no, they have no clue what they could use from you. This is where creativity comes in. So this is a little hard to see, but it's more of just the setup that I wanted to sort of explain. So for me, what I do is I have my stakeholder on the left-hand side, and then the requirement is in the middle, and then with the serial number. So the serial number, what it does for me is it helps me with metrics when I'm building metrics. It also helps me with keeping track of the actual requirements when it comes to things like working with my threat feeds, because I have some vendors that we use where we use these numbers to keep track of alerting and things like that. But do something simple like this. It could be as easy as an Excel, where you just go in and you look at what are the primary intelligence requirements that this person needs. A is assess the collection plan. What does that mean? So after you get your requirements, you have to then go get that information. Whether it's external or internal, you need information or sources to go and look for that information. And so what's interesting is that as you change your requirements, you might have to change your collection plan. I remember there was a point where we had onboarded functionality in a company, and so we did change the requirement, but then 6 months in, we realized that we didn't actually answer any questions against that requirement. And that's because we weren't looking in the right places. We didn't have the right sources to answer those questions. And so whether you're using your SIM for internal stuff, or you're using threat feeds or sharing communities, you need to encapsulate this collection plan in some way. And you don't necessarily have to have a document. I do, but what's more important is the actual process of going through the steps, the logical steps to know this is what I need to do to build out this collection plan. This is me going through the process of looking through my different sources and how I want to answer all these questions. sort of like a business plan, right? Half the value of a business plan is to help you walk through the steps of formulating all your thoughts so you know what you're talking about when it comes time. Cool thing about assessing the collection plan and metrics, and you'll see that that's a common theme throughout this talk, is that if you find that there are things that you're using for free or things you're even paying for, if you're not getting any value out of them, it might be time to cycle those off and bring something else on. And so you want to look for all of the things and find a way to keep track of where you're getting your tippers, where your high value tippers are, and then the ones that are not working for you, just cycle them away. So Rebecca and Rob Lee, they did this evolution of CTI, I think it was 2019, and there's a section in it that talks about sources, and I think it's really cool. You can see the stats of where people were getting their information from. If you haven't read this entire document, I highly encourage you to do it. It's great research, great survey, and it gives you a lot of feedback to how things kind of look in the threat intelligence space as it stands. But as you look here, there's all sorts of different places where you can look for information, and there might be places that you haven't even thought of. So I highly recommend taking a look at that. Strive for impact. This is probably the most crucial part of the easy button, in my opinion, because I've spent a lot of time writing reports I know no one's ever going to read. And there's a reason for that. One of the reasons is that I didn't write that report or that product to be actionable. And so being actionable is the most important thing for us. Because if everyone just says, oh yeah, thumbs up, that was good, but does nothing with it, like what are we really doing? When you produce things that doesn't help anyone, that's not good for the stakeholder, and that's not good for you either. We want to feel, validated. We want to feel like we're providing value for our companies. But if we come in and we do these weekly reports that people just kind of read or don't read, and we're spending like 3 days trying to put them together, we need to relook at that and see if that's something that we need to continue to do. Like, what is the value? How do I tailor something so that I know that the stakeholder is going to make a decision or act on the information that I'm providing? Another thing that you can do is capture metrics. So how often is someone actually doing an action or making a decision based off the intelligence that you're providing? And then this could be as simple as asking them, just following up afterwards, like, hey, did anything happen with this? Did you make any decisions? Did you change something on the firewall? Did we block this? Just anything like that, just to clarify that this has actually made an impact. One thing that I did at Netflix, and I almost feel like it was like a cheat code for me to actually get action out of threat intelligence. And what I did is I started this Purple Team initiative where we didn't want to invest full-time bodies for Red Team, and we have detection engineering, but we didn't have anybody doing actual hunting. And so what I did was I copied one of the sort of the concepts that we have for IR. We have an IR team, but then we also have reservist IR members that come in when we need help, or if the whole team's pretty much out for this part, we train them up to do IR for us. And so I took this concept and I said, why can't we apply this to purple teaming? And so for us, the red team is adversary emulation, right? Just bare bones, they're pretending to be the adversary. And our blue team is our detection engineering, people that are interested in hunt. And so I put a call out to the entire company, and you didn't have to be in a security team. You could have been an engineer, a software developer. If you wanted to help, you could help. And I got about 35 or so volunteers to help with this. And we finished our first engagement before I went on paternity. And it was amazing. It was an amazing experience because threat intelligence was actually setting the context for the purple team engagement. These are the threats that we are likely to face, and so we need to emulate those adversaries that are likely to do those actions. And so then we have people that are emulating the adversary, and we have the blue team that's trying to track down all the things that we don't catch with our conventional solutions. The why. The why for yield to feedback. This is tough, and I've seen it kind of muddled over the years. Yielding to feedback is important because you want to grow. And sometimes the only way you're going to grow is to get feedback from your stakeholders, from people on the team, and things like that. So one thing that I find is that you might have a disagreement with a stakeholder. And when you have a disagreement with a stakeholder, that usually means something needs to change. Now, I'm not saying it's not like one of those the customer's always right scenarios. It might be just a case of communication. Maybe you need to sit down with your stakeholder, have a conversation, kind of like in the beginning when you had to form your requirements. But when you sit down, explain why you're doing something the way you're doing, and also listen. Listen to them and hear what they have to say about the program or the products that you're putting out. Like what is off about it? And so you sit down, you figure out what needs to be adjusted, and you adjust. You make sure you're on the same page. And make it easy for them to submit feedback. If you have this long feedback form that they have to fill out and they have to go to certain places to do it, it's not going to work. Because then they're just not going to want to do it because they want to move on to the next thing. So one thing that I did at Netflix is I made it really easy, and I'll show you that in a slide. But also I use feedback to set goals. So one thing I do is I set a score in the form. It's always relevancy and impact, 1 through 5. And so whenever I send off this form that I'm going to show you here in a second, I'm able to then average over a quarter like what my score is. How have I done from a relevancy and an impact standpoint? And I can actually set goals for myself. So if I was 4.2 this quarter, next quarter I want to be 4.5. So the metrics is helping me grow the program. And it's just a simple form, just a simple Google feedback form that I send off. I have it pre-populated with the RFI name and their information and stuff like that. So it takes about 60 seconds. But the interesting thing is then I pre-can the link and I send it to them in Slack. And what that does is it makes it super easy. It's tailored. It's, hey, thank you so much for sending the RFI. I have a link here. Could you please take 30 to 60 seconds to go and give me some feedback? And you know what? I've actually gotten 100% feedback every time I send this link out. And so this will actually help you grow your programs to a great degree. So that's the entire framework. It's easy. It's something that I use as a conceptual touchstone. Whenever things seem to get off the rails or if I need to readjust the program, I always come back to this. And I hope that this is something that people can use in their operations to help grow their teams or build their functions. But I want to leave you with a prediction. I wholeheartedly feel that we are in a really awesome space. And I'll tell you why. We're in an awesome space because we touch so many other security functions or business functions, because we integrate with all those other functions with our intelligence. And so we have to understand how they operate in order to support them. And I have the feeling that there are people in this room that are leading threat intelligence programs right now that are on their way to lead security programs. They're going to be the CISOs, the chief security officers. They're going to lead the program because of the fortunate place that we are in our role.